What is the scariest thing your spouse ever said to you?
I can't believe I'm still alive. I took all my pills. Yes. He died soon after. User replies. I'm so sorry for your loss. That's truly terrifying. Look at all those snakes on the ceiling. It was the middle of the night. He was actually fast asleep. There were no snakes. User replies. My ex was an arachnophobe and my son had a fever dream/nightmare and was very distressed, screaming that he had woken up and seen tarantulas scuttling into the corners of the underside of the upper bunk of his bunk bed. I was doing that, honey, you're very sick, and you've been asleep, and I know it feels very real, but I promise you that there are no spiders. When my ex just ran in, scooped up the boy, and hollered, fuck that noise, woman. Call me when you've flipped the mattresses. And legit ran out of the apartment with kiddo, lol. Which annoyed me no end at the time, but my son later told me made him feel very heard. User replies. I sometimes see spiders too, it's a horrible way to wake up. One time woke up and saw a huge, greenish-colored spider walking in our ceiling and barely registered my feral screaming while trying to get away from bed. That is the only time I have heard my husband shout from fear. Luckily he realized quickly what was going on and calmed me down. Oh, and we don't have big spiders here where we live, so it was clear it was just a dream hallucination. There are times when I only wake up because I know you're here. User replies. Very sweet, but it would break my heart to hear, which is exactly why I don't say it to my husband, even when it feels true. I think I'm having a heart attack. It was her first panic attack. I broke every law driving her to the hospital. Thankfully she's doing better now. User replies. I said this to my fiancé last winter, after being in the process of getting diagnosed with a heart arrhythmia. I woke him up, sobbing, in the middle of the night, when he was dead asleep and said, I think I'm having a heart attack. Poor guy. It's insane how a panic attack can mimic a heart attack. My arm even went numb/tingly. During our first marriage counseling session where we were asked our goals for this session, she said, I don't want this to work. Edit, it did not work. That was the end of our marriage. At the time it was the scariest moment of my life. Today, 3 years later, I can honestly say neither of us were happy and needed some help. Therapy works. Sometimes honesty hurts and revulsions are hard. User replies. When me and my first wife were driving to a counselor I asked how she found them and she said a friend recommended them. I asked how they were doing and she looked at me and was like, they got divorced. I was like, oh. I thought about hanging myself in the garage last night. My husband, when he finally told me how bad he was struggling with his mental health. I had no idea he was in such a dark place. Hearing that come out of his mouth both scared the shit out of me and ripped my heart out. User replies. My story is similar. Except I'm the husband who reached out. My wife saved my life just over 2 years ago by being there for me. User replies. When I had a similar conversation with my now ex-wife in an attempt to reach out and express how bad my mental state was getting, she responded by making fun of me. Haven't thought about that in years. My husband was in a very dark place a while ago. One night he was wasted and told me it was time for me to take his guns away from him. I'd never felt my stomach drop like it did when I heard him say that. User replies. I hope he is doing better, and you are as well. It's what he was dealing with, and I cannot imagine the weight on you while he's in such a bad place. User replies. He is much better now, thank you. He voluntarily admitted himself the next day. It was one of the hardest times of my life watching him go through that. User replies. What a legend for having the wherewithal to tell you how serious things had gotten. Too many men hide their pain until it's too late. We need to talk when you get home. Folks, I spent the next 6 hours going over every possible thing I could have done wrong to warrant that response. We were in the middle of buying a house and planning our wedding, and I thought everything could possibly be crumbling. Turns out my darling wife, love of my life and my best friend, missed the fucking memo of what "we need to talk" means in a relationship and wanted to talk to me about carpeting for the house. That conversation happened over a dozen years ago at this point, and I still remind her from time to time about how she almost gave me a heart attack. To this day she thinks it's hilarious. User replies, quote, "We need to talk when you get home. About the carpeting. We need to talk about the carpeting when you get home. Why is that so fucking difficult? Be specific, woman. Damn." All the lights downstairs just went on. There is someone in our house. I was on a business trip and my wife called me at 3 a.m. Never felt so helpless in my life. She called the police and they searched our home from top to bottom, but we never found out who switched on every single light on the ground floor. User replies, "Our basement was like this. Husband kept blaming me for leaving the light on, but I had stopped going down there because I was pregnant and didn't want to do unnecessary stairs. When he, quite upset at me for continuing to do what irked him so much, told me, 'Can you stop leaving lights on? I'm the one who has to pay the power bill,' I was like, actually I haven't been down there in weeks. I assumed the basement was haunted or we had someone secretly living down there, unlikely because we have a security setup. And dogs. But it turns out one of the light switches, the type with a dimmer, was just broken. You'd turn it off and leave the room. But then a few minutes later it would short and turn back on. If this is what being with you for the rest of my life is going to be like, I want out right now. 6 months into my second marriage. I finally heard it. That I was damaged and that I needed help. Immediately found a therapist. Went steadily for 10 years. Hard as fuck. Lots of uncomfortable times. But it changed me. We are together now pretty fucking happily, 23 years with now 2 amazing kids. Shit doesn't have to last forever. User replies, "This made me so happy to read. I discovered he was addicted to cocaine. It was completely out of the blue. I would have never found out if I hadn't stained my shirt and had to go home to change and walked in on him snorting a fat rail at 1:39 p.m. on a random Tuesday. I gave him an ultimatum, my support during rehab unconditionally, or we completely part ways if you want to continue snorting coke all day. He said, the coke, I don't want to talk to you, chose coke and we divorced and I have no idea whether he is alive or dead. Frankly, the man I married never actually existed. I have such a bad picker. I've decided to just give up." User replies, "Honestly, bless him for being straightforward and allowing you to get out quickly. He could have taken you through multiple years of hell of trying to get clean and relapsing over and over. Staying home to do lines alone on a random Tuesday is pretty deep in it. It's a blessing you caught him that day and got out." Said we needed to talk about the relationship, but he wanted to wait until bedtime. Hours later, we're in bed, and he dumps me for his ex, then falls asleep while I bawl my eyes out. User replies, "Yikes. What a cold fish. You don't need someone like that in your life anyway. If you scream and she wakes up, I'll throw her off the balcony." While he was beating me, our 3.5-year-old daughter was sleeping, lived on the 5th floor. That was the first time he put his hands on me, and I left the next day with our daughter. It's been 9 years. User replies, "So sorry. That's horrifying to go from 0 to threatening to kill a child. Was he verbally abusive before this or did he suddenly just stop hiding?" User replies, "He was definitely verbally abusive. I just didn't see it as that bad until later on. I grew up with an alcoholic stepfather,
so in my head it wasn't as bad, and I triggered it. The so-called standard routine of looking for the love one saw growing up, unfortunately. You already made it halfway through the video. Let me know your thoughts in the comments and don't forget to subscribe. Let's continue. I've been in an accident. User replies. I've been that guy. She happened to call me as I was being lifted into the ambulance with my head smashed after being hit by a car. I had regained consciousness only seconds earlier. Somehow I had the presence of mind to phrase it, "I'm okay, but I have to go to hospital because I've had an accident." "Who's that standing in the corner?" she said at 2 a.m. while sitting up in bed and pointing towards the corner. I was still half asleep but freaking out, and then she just laid back down and continued sleeping like nothing happened. No one was in the corner. User replies. One time I got out of bed to use the bathroom, and as I crossed in front of the bed my wife sat up and started screaming like nothing I've ever heard. I had an injury that has had me sleeping with extra pillows to position my body comfortably since I was early 20s. The pillows made it look in the dark like I was still asleep next to her. So when she saw me crossing in front of the bed she thought someone had broken in and was in our room. User replies. My wife was having a scary dream where someone was coming in through the bedroom window. At about that same time, I must have rolled over and put my arm around her or something and she starts screaming. I was scared shitless and fell out of bed onto the floor. She yelled, "Who are you?" I was so shaken up that I couldn't even remember my own name. After a few seconds of stuttering and muttering I finally said, I'm your husband." She finally came to her senses, as did I, and we eventually were able to go back to sleep. We also soon moved the bed to a different wall, away from the window. User replies. I once slapped my wife because she leaned over and tried to kiss me before she left for work. I was slightly awake, enough to register the feeling of her hair tickling my face and think it was a fly. As I went to swat the fly away, I opened my eyes mid-swat and saw a face an inch from my face, and my immediate reaction was to swat harder, and it turned into me slapping her fairly hard. She hasn't forgotten it in 14 years. She was filling our water bottles before coming to bed and I was just on my phone in bed. I heard her come up the stairs almost like she tripped on the last step because she usually misses that last one. Just as I'm getting up to go see if she's alright, she comes flying through the bedroom door, closing it behind her. I never saw her scared like this and I was confused until she said dash. Something just followed me up the stairs. I nearly shit myself, that type of fear where tears spring to your eyes and your stomach knots. I'm not sure what I would have done if it was just the two of us alone in the house. There were others, but they were in their room and asleep. At first I thought it was the dog, but she confirmed it was very much not. There was nothing there. She claims it was a large black mass behind her that she could hear. We both had a bit of trouble going to sleep that night. User replies. Best friend at a friend's house had a dark mass behind him, over his shoulder and looking down on him. Middle of the night on the way to restroom and he felt it. Paused for he didn't know how long, 10 seconds/10 minutes, he couldn't say. Then he looked up and saw it in a mirror at the end of the hall. Sprinted to restroom and stayed there until the sun came up. His friend said he looked terrible in the morning and he responded by saying he saw something last night. Friend, oh man, talk to mom about it. He tells the mom about the experience and she asks, was it the light one or dark one? Dark one. Okay, good, the light one is mean. And that's all that was said. User replies. You slept? Ever again? I'm tired, and want to go home. He died 6 hours later, after fighting cancer for 6 weeks. User replies. I want to die at home. She died 8 weeks later after battling cancer for 5 weeks. Fuck cancer. I'm sorry you both had to go through it too. Edit. Wrote in haste, sorry. To clarify, she had a few weeks at home but died 8 weeks after the diagnosis. Thanks for the supportive messages. My wife woke me up in the middle of the night and said, "I'm bleeding." She was pregnant and was having a miscarriage. User replies. Same man. Wife walked around to my side of the bed, shook me awake and said, "I think I'm losing the baby." My wife suffers from bipolar disorder. Before her first long hospitalization when it was diagnosed, and while she was going through her first severe manic episode with psychosis, she later told me that the voices in her head told her that I was Satan and she needed to kill me. And she told them no, that she knew better. So there's that. User replies. Your wife beat the voices through sheer will. Wild. She loves you. User replies. That's a nice thought. It's great that she had that awareness at that point, but the people who can't fight off the voices don't love their partners less. Mental illness isn't always something one can fight by willpower alone. When one is dealing with a mentally ill loved one, it's easy to fall into the thought trap of, they wouldn't be this way if they loved me more, if I were a better person, they just tried harder. In reality, mental illness is unpredictable, and can overwhelm the most loving, well-intentioned people. User replies. I appreciate you writing this. I've gotten flack from some of my closest family members in the past due to my mental illness because they didn't think I was trying hard enough. Never mind that I don't sleep more than 4 hours a night and our entire family has a strong history of mental illness, including her own diagnosed issues. It really fucking hurt to hear that they thought I didn't care enough about them, when I put so much energy into just surviving each day, and I know that at the drop of a hat, I'd gladly give my life for any of my family or friends. I can't get E to wake up. E was our 9-month-old daughter who was near death due to severe flu-related dehydration. I was at work and broke every existing traffic law to make it home. We rushed her to the hospital where they had to place her IV in her carotid artery due to her veins collapsing. Thanks to the amazing hospital staff, she survived with no complications. The episode scared me so bad that I was never again able to carpool without me driving. I would not give up control of me being able to leave work if anything similar ever happened. This happened 31 years ago, but it's abso-fucking-lutely terrifying to this day. User replies. Fellow dad here, son's currently 2.5 years old. I can't imagine what it must have been like to get that message, to realize the situation your family was in, to go through what you and your family had to go to, nor do I ever want to. But I can tell you this. You did very well. Don't let anybody tell you differently. Glad everyone's okay. It was a Saturday morning, about a month ago, and he came downstairs and asked if I had just been upstairs to wake him. No. He proceeds to tell me someone shook me and said, "Get up. You only have 6 more years to live." He was shaken by the experience all weekend, and now says it's nothing to worry about. Me on the other hand can't let it go. I was in the other room playing a game on the computer when my wife yelled, "He's choking." She was watching our then 8-month-old son. I am a big guy. 6'1", 280 pounds. I have never moved so fast in my life. I don't even remember running to the living room. Just that I was playing my game one moment, next I was on the couch with him stomach down on my knee, performing the Heimlich. Heimlich didn't work at first, but I could see something in his mouth/throat. I was able to reach in and grab it. It was a tiny leaf that got brought in on, I guess, one of our shoes from outside. After that, he took a big breath in and started crying. I have never been more scared in my life. We both just held him after that and calmed him down. He turned 1 this past Wednesday, and is healthy as ever. My spouse wanted to go to a bar with friends. However, he was only gone for about 30 minutes and rushed back home. He rushed through the door, hugged me and said, I thought you'd hang yourself. It was totally out of the blue. I don't have a history with depression or suicidal thoughts. I was feeling a little down a few days before, but nothing too serious. It really scared me when he suddenly talked about my death. I think I have to go to the hospital. Except it was a text and he never got to hit send. My girlfriend frequently talks in her sleep. We quite often have opposite sleep schedules due to the nature of my work, so she usually sleeps in the bed next to my desk. One night she rolled towards me, eyes still closed, and said, "Babe, tell the guy in the corner to stop staring at me." I have a habit of conversing with her when she has little sleep comments, so I replied back saying, "There's nobody in the corner, dumbass," and then she almost instantly responded saying, "He's hiding in the shadows." She'd had a few creepy comments before that, but she never really responds when I talk back, and when she does, it's usually gibberish. Probably the most chilling interaction we've ever had, and it's safe to say I kept looking over my shoulder for the rest of the night. Big thanks to everyone who watched the entire video. We're aiming for 250 subscribers by the end of the year. If you enjoyed it, consider subscribing. Drop a like and share your thoughts in the comments. I'll catch you in the next one.